Okay, this is the assembly video number 5 for the End of Thrive. It's the wiring. Basically, I just dropped the bed on. I haven't screwed it down. The holes that drilled, they're down underneath. I use silicone bushings. And here's your Y motor and the back. And I put the bed wiring sticking out just like it does on a regular End of 3. The angle's going to be just about the same. You kind of want to leave it where it's going to land so you don't put a lot of pressure on it. You will have to take off. There's a little plastic thing that snaps on here. I took it off. I'm going to put a zip tie there because it'll clear the hot end. But it'll... the hot end will hit that little plastic thing, and it's just because the way this gantry is designed, it can't tilt down any, and it tilts down a little on an End of 3. And so that's just going to drop on like that. With the end stop, it's pretty much a standard end stop. You put your hot end on, you run a nozzle right to the edge of the bed, and you just slide the, I mounted it with an M3 by 5 with a T-nut, and I did stick a little tiny washer on it just to kind of be like a little helper. And I just pushed it till I just heard a click, tightened it up. You may find that you may have to tweak it like a millimeter when you're done. Now, my Y end stop, I haven't tightened it up yet, but it's got a kind of a different looking bracket. This works for an H2. I'm going to remix another one tonight that's going to look like just like it, but it's going to have a little longer this way with the slot elongated so it can push a little further for a standard hot end. And basically I did the same thing. You push it back to where you want home to be, you know, the edge of the bed, and you adjust this till it comes up and clicks. I haven't adjusted mine yet. Actually, it's pretty close, but I'll have to come ahead a couple millimeters. But, and then on these, basically you want to get them so that they got just barely a little bit of friction. Like I said, you loosen up the 2 bolts here just on one side while you're adjusting. And on the right, there's 2 of them. Once you're done adjusting, 4 lock nuts are going to go on the bottom. Same thing over here. And then the other night we didn't tighten up this motor here. It's basically when you tighten that up, you want to kind of run it back and forth a little bit. It'll settle the motor into place. Make sure this isn't rocking back and forth, because it can if something's misaligned or if your shafts are like kind of maladjusted in and out a little bit and pushing pressure. And so once you move it back and forth a little bit, you can tighten those up, tighten this up. And then we're pretty much ready for wiring. So what I did, this is a stock Ender 3 enclosure. I left the board right in it the way it goes. But what I did is on this side here, that's a 125 millimeter extrusion, and I just mounted it to the hole that originally mounted on the underside of the Ender 3. And there's 2, they're M5 by 5 with T-nuts, and we're going to go on the front left-hand corner. And it's a little tricky, like one-handed. But basically, the bottom bolt, this bolt here, is going to go in this extrusion slot, and this bolt here is going to go in this one. And what I do is just kind of like slide it down so it's right in line with this kind of edge here. Tighten it up. Kind of get this bar as square as you can. And then I just poke an M3 hole where it lines up. Use a M3 by 20 with a T-nut, and it'll lock that together so it doesn't wobble. I'll probably do that part off camera just because, well, I might line it up and drill the hole on camera, I'm not sure. And then this is our power supply. If you're using a stock one, for a pro, you might already have this piece and not have to print it. This is an aftermarket and it's wider. I did not make this piece. I found it on Thingiverse, and I think it's in the information's in the file set. Or it might have been 3D printables, but I left a folder with all the info anyway. I am going to remix for the stock size. I'll probably do that tomorrow or the next day. That way, if somebody doesn't have one and they have the thinner power supply. But, well, anyways, so it's going to mount up here on the left-hand side and the back. You'll notice a round spacer and 2 bolts sticking out. They're up high. And 1 bolt, this is where the bottom bolt's going to go. And that's where the top bolt's going to go. And they just boom and boom. Them are M4. I used by 25, but I put like a little washer on the back of each one of them, and whatnot. So that's going to bolt up there, and then we'll be pretty much ready to start wiring this thing. So I got 2 of these boards. These are the 4.2.2. The pinout's pretty much almost the same, but most of the stuff's labeled. And like here, your power supply comes into this one, right by the blue fuse. They're labeled plus and minus, but they're kind of in between there. You got to kind of look to see them. And then X, Y, Z, and E are right on the top. BL touch pin is that, what is it, 3, 4, 5 pin next to the black plug, which is the LCD. And then these little white plugs, the first one, I'm not sure what that is. I'd have to look in the pinout, but we'll just kind of go through it as we put it together. And I'm going to mount the power supply and mount this, and then we'll start wiring it. And I have BL Touch, so you get to see how that hooks up. Now with BL Touch, keep in mind there's like 4 or 5 different wiring styles. So you kind of got to go, like this diagram's online, but the plug colors don't so much matter, because where there's no standard up here on this end, they could run the colors left to right. They could be random colors, different colors. So it's like you kind of have to look at the end of the plug and look at the other end of the plug that plugs in on that port, that white port right down there, and make sure that everything is the right way. Otherwise, you're going to have some weird problems. And there is a slightly different BL Touch that's specifically made for the Ender 3. the anti-clabs. I think it's 3.0. It's a 5-volt and it wires a little tiny bit different, but it's less common. So alright, so I'm going to pause the video and then just get our assemblies mounted, and then we'll get to wire in here, and then hopefully I'll be doing a print tonight. Alright, so be right back. Okay, and we are back. So I mounted the box. I decided to poke this hole. I guess I could have slid that a little tighter in before I tightened it up. Let's see if I can do that now. There we go. So basically I just push it in until it's snug up against this rail. And most of our all of our wires are going to come back past this bolt and out. And very important, most Ender 3s do not have ferrules, or however you pronounce it. These particular ones have it on it, but they didn't come from an Ender 3. They came from the Ender extender kit that I stripped out. And this is like a ferrule kit. And the reason why you kind of want to use them is because if there's solder here, it heats, swells, cools, shrinks, goes back and forth. Solder's real malleable, so through like months of heating and cooling, it's gonna loosen up them wires, and then they're gonna arc out and they're gonna burn black marks on that green thing and possibly even cook your board. And they might not, but usually it at least damages it some, so you gotta buy new pieces anyway, because you can buy this here. I've never bought one. I've always just taken apart my things and put ferrules on, but this is the crimper that come with the kit. They have different brands that look a little different. This is the only kit I've bought before. I got it on Amazon. And it seems to be alright. And so, alright, we're gonna put you on a stand here so that I can have two hands. I'll probably have to keep moving my phone down. So let me see, we've got negative is all the way towards the outside, so it'll be right there. Positive is right there, and those are held on with a regular screwdriver. Figure out where I put that little bit. I just had it when I took this thing apart. Of course, they're small. I might have to grab another one just so I don't keep looking and looking and looking. Yeah. It's on the other side of the camera. Oh, okay. Let's get this girl out of here. It's not that one. It's not that one. Figures. Alright, I guess I'm just gonna try to step around the camera and get one. Oh, it's over there, but the where leave it to me to like forget one tool every time at least. Okay, so you don't want to like extreme crank on these because that plastic can only handle so much. But I like to go, you know, good and snug, like snug them, and then like, let's see. probably another 1/8 of a turn anyway. You want to make sure they can't pull out, but you don't want to yank on them real hard and abuse the board either. And so that's the power in. And I don't have this apart. I probably should have. But basically it's labeled what's, 24 volt. And like this little plug has 3 wires. In fact, I think I know I got another one up here. Or I did have. Okay, this one doesn't have a switch in it, but I got one with a switch somewhere. But, well, anyways, regardless, it'll have a red, which is your hot, and a black, which is your neutral, and then this is your ground. Certain brands, the ground could be green, but the red is hot or load, goes on the load inside on this power supply. This will go to the neutral, and then this will go to the ground, which has like a little ground symbol with some lines. And then of course, this will go to 24 volt, positive, and that'll be 24 volt negative. And then that wires this and gives you power here. And then I put my hot end on. My hot end's a little different than standard hot end. But what I do is I mount the hot end and anything for wires, get it all done. And then I push the hot end to the far travel side, as far from the motor as it can. And then we got these wires here. You don't want them to be all like, pulled tight and hard. You want it to have a little bit of slack when you zip tie to this little hole on the X-axis motor. And in the beginning, just because I'm probably going to shift stuff, I snug it enough so it's not going to slide real easy, but I can still slide it if I need to. And we get an X-axis motor, and you'll run a wire. Make sure it'll reach your board, and that'll plug in there. The 2-wire is the end stop, and I like to wire the hot end and stuff first. I got ferrules, they came on this one. If yours doesn't have them, I suggest putting them on, just because there's a bit of current going through there and you don't want to cook something on the board. And so, let me see, I didn't label these, so I'll have to kind of like shake them a little bit to figure out which one is the one I want here for E. Or I guess I can pull. Okay, so, I should say X. So X is this, well, let's pull this down again. So X, clearly marked. And this is gonna plug right in there. I'll probably do a little pinout video, because it is possible to have a different pinout. And then, of course, that's going to plug in right up here on this motor from there. And then we got Y, which is this over here, but we're going to wait on that for a minute. And we're going to jump, because we might as well just wire up the hot end. That way we don't have a bunch of loose wires everywhere. So we got an end stop, and if you I don't know. So you can see X, Y, Z. If you got a BL touch, you're not going to use that. Well, you can use that, but then you only use 3 wires up here, and it's much easier. And the way I set up my firmware is just to use that plug anyway. So we're on the X-axis, so we're going to plug into the X port on the end stop right there. And then these are ambidextrous. The hot end heater is going to go on them too. Like I said, barrels. Not sure if I can hold the camera and tighten that and get it exactly how I want it. So I'm going to try to, I guess. I know you can't see what I'm doing while I'm doing it, but and again, you know, tight, so it's more than hand tight, but don't like crank right on it. So then we got a thermistor wire, and the 2 far right ones, I don't know if I can get a focus on it, but one of them says TB and one says TH. TB means thermistor bed. TH means thermistor hot end. And the thermistor hot end is the farthest one to the right there. And then we have, in my case, all right, we got E. So E, normally, I guess, on an Ender 3 would be kind of near this motor, but on that bracket behind on the Z tower. And in my case, I got a direct drive, so it goes all the way up there to this, to that stepper motor. But if you don't have that, you'll have this bracket with your extruder. Basically, this is that extruder wire. So that's going to plug in on the farthest one to the right. A couple of my wires are a little bit long. I'm just going to kind of give them a neat fold. Mostly I ran out of crimp ends, and I can't exactly just, well, I need it running, so. And then this is my BL Touch wires. And I will probably do a separate video on how to wire this plug, because sometimes you buy them, you plug them in, and it doesn't work, and you're like, what the heck? Because I've gone through that quite a few times. So that just plugs in there. And basically, these 2 outer wires are signal wires, and then those are the ones that actually work the probe and stuff. Now, you'll have one fan, like this is your always on hot end fan. I don't have barrels on it yet. I am going to put a set on it, but I'm going to run, like this is our top cover with the fan. My wires are longer than they need to be, but it's the fan I had to get this going with, and it came out of another hot end. So what I'm going to do is, you know, hook the same colors, because this fan wired to the plug down here where it normally goes, both of these plugs run with your fan speed. And we kind of don't want this to stop running when you're not running this cooling parts fan up here. So I'm going to crimp a ferrule, you know, to link both of these. This is low voltage, so if you didn't have ferrules, you'd probably be all right. But and then of course, if you get them backwards, the fan will not run. And that always on fan is gonna hook down here on these two further left, and those are marked. I don't know if I can focus. Yeah, you can kind of see the plus on that first one. So that's going to be where the red wire goes, and the black wire will go next to it. And then we haven't quite gotten to the bed yet, but the middle ones are going to be the bed heater, where these are the hot end heater. And I think I'll have to crimp ferrules on that too. And then your parts cooling fan, my things popped out of the plug, but you'll have blue and yellow, and they're gonna plug right in where that plug popped out when I took mine apart. I'm gonna put them back in, and we're gonna plug nothing in, or at least I'm not going to. You can choose to put your, and it doesn't matter if you flip-flop them, because both of these are the same port. They do the same thing. But I just don't like that fan not running, or only running 30% when I'm running it slow and I'm doing like a 20-hour or a 30-hour print. I just think the drivers could stand a little more fan, and so that's what I do. So I'm going to pause the video for a minute, crimp some ferrules on, and then I'll show you what I got plugged in, and then we'll wire up the bed after, and the Y end stop, and the Y axis motor, and then we'll be pretty much ready to rock and roll. So we'll be right back. Okay, and we're back. I hooked up my always on fan. As long as you got a stock fan, it's gonna be the blue and white. Pretty sure I got that the right way. The worst thing that happens is when you power the machine on, if it's wrong, the fan won't come on, and you know to switch them. And I'm pretty sure that was the way it went. I'm kind of going by memory because it doesn't really show you in the pinout. There might be a more detailed one somewhere. But so, I did the always on fan. I tried to use ferrules, but none of them fit. They're low voltage, so it's not going to do a burn in your board. But the hot all the way to the left, the grounds, the next pin over, and then, let me see here, we got a Y motor here. I'm going to tie those up better. I know my wire's the right length, so Y is this second motor port. Right there. And then we got a Z motor. Where did my wire go? I think it's right here. It's that motor. And that is going to plug in there. This is our end stop, which should be the second one over. I'll show you a little closer. Right next to the other end stop we did. This one right here, that's Y. This would be Z if you had a Z end stop. I don't have a Z end stop, but that Z end stop, if you had one, would be on a mount like that. And you would just mount it. Oh, the camera's gonna rotate. On this bar here. And then you would drill a hole right in line down through like a 2.5 millimeter and thread it. Or actually, I think I used 4M and drilled a 3.5 millimeter hole. You could do either, but from the factory they have thumb nuts for those. See how they're wide, and basically you would thread a screw up through the hole and thread that onto it. One of them's gonna lock it height wise up and down, and then I usually put a burr on a thread on the top side that would be sticking up through, like a couple threads down, just a little small burr, so that this doesn't spin easily. When you thread it on, it goes on a few turns, and then you just give it a little and then how you adjust it up and down will be the second thumb nut that goes flush up against this. You just crack it loose, turn it from the bottom side, and adjust your height that way. But I got the bail touch, so I don't need the hole there. And that these wide nuts like this make it easier to line up with that end stop. So if you're off by like a 0.5 millimeter or a millimeter, you're still gonna hit the end stop. It's not gonna matter. And those are M4 thumb nuts, and they're very convenient. I also use them when I mount like beds on like Voron style printers, or custom beds with Z, and just use them as spaces. So we still got our thermistor for the bed, and that's gonna be right next to this one here, the second one back. That is the thermistor for the bed, and that's just gonna plug in right there, and that's the Z again, so the end stop for the Z. And then the last thing I got, which I haven't crimped the ferrules on, is the heater for the bed, and our LCD screen. But so I'm gonna stick us on the tripod here and figure out kind of what size ferrule I want. Not sure if the blue ones, yeah, the blue ones are about right. So they just slide on. You want to slide them on, down over that wire casing a little bit. We're going to use this, and you slide it through the hole, and you just give it a squeeze. You'll hear some ratcheting, and then release. And of course you want to make sure they grip on nice and good, and that one's good. We got the same gauge wire. You may end up having a different kind of kit if you put ferrules on, and it may have different colors. So let's crimp this one. Again, we're going to make sure it held good, just a little tug. And when you crimp it, it'll leave like little indentures where it kind of squeezes it down. And there's not really a hot and a neutral, but they go in the only two holes left. And I might have to back them up to get them in there, because when I first wired this, I didn't have ferrules, and I just wanted to get it up and running. And I took the risk of possibly nuking my board. And from the factory, they use solder, and they shouldn't. So basically those will just slide in, and I'm not gonna ram those super deep. I'm going just deep enough so I know they're in there good, because I don't think there's a hole on the back side, but I am not entirely sure. Okay, and we're in there. And okay, then I just kind of check, make sure I got a bite. And then for the LCD, we got a cable, two ends the same. It doesn't matter which way, which end you plug into the board, but there's a little slot that lines up with a slot here. And if you're using a V2 screen, then there'll only be one port on the back of the screen. But if you're using a Pro screen, you'll notice that they're marked EXP1, EXP2, and EXP3. And we're only going to use EXP3. These other two are for like different types of boards and different pinouts, and some boards require, certain motherboards might require more than one plug, but not any of the creality boards anyway. And so we're gonna plug into this one with that fat gray cable. And then this, obviously, we'll want our cover on. What I do is I just loop my cable that way. And, of course, I got to zip tie this stuff together, neaten this. I'm going to neaten the rest of my wiring up here so that I know I ain't got any slack where I don't want it. And then this cover with the fan in it will mount magnetic motor catch. It'll mount like this. The wires obviously won't be hanging out. You won't be able to put a screw in that top hole because we don't have a bracket, but these two front screws you can put in. And then there'll be one on the bottom, middle, and they're just 3M by, I've been using 3M by 5s. And that'll hold that together. I am gonna make a little, because when this is on, you'll have like a 20 millimeter opening over here and an opening in the back. I haven't designed something for that yet, but that's on the agenda for this week, and it'll be in the file section. But I'm gonna dust this off, do some zip tying, and then probably before I pop the cover on, I'm gonna make sure my fan turns, because I'm wired up and I know I'm not going to short anything. Oh, and that's the other thing. When you are wiring this up, don't have anything plugged in, because you can like arc something and cook a driver on your board or something else on your board, and you just don't want to do that. And so, little details to know when this is mounted like this. Obviously, the SD card slot is now upside down. It's no big deal. It works just fine. I actually kind of like it better that way. And so basically that's the wiring. I guess a few things to say. With the thermistors, when you power on, like where it says what your heat temperature is on your screen, if you get an error there, you probably have one wire that's not connected good on the thermistor, or like up on the hot end, like if you over tighten the thermistor, you can damage the thermistors. They go like hand tight and then just a tiny smidge more. And that way, because if you have a cartridge one and you dent it, it'll short it. And if you have the other style, you could just kind of, like, I don't know if it's got like a little glass end or what it is, but it's a funky end and it's easy to damage anyway. And then I guess for other things, if you get a stock hot end, you'll have a Bowden. I got a reverse Bowden, and I am going to make a print for the reverse Bowden, but what I did for now is I just took this part of a plastic extruder I didn't care about, and I put a couple of T-nuts, because I'm only using 2 holes. And on mine, I decided to mount that. Let's see, how did I do that? I guess I mounted it like right on this left-hand side, you know, in the slots there, up there. And then my reverse Bowden plugged in. On an Ender 5, they go in that back corner, but everything's kind of in reverse. And plus, I kind of liked having my spool holder up above my screen, but with the spool pointed, you know, that way, the holder pointed that way, so it's not right over my screen. And it just made it easier to load it and whatnot. And then, of course, after you're all done and wired, I kind of recommend not just trying to auto home when you turn it on. What I would do is I would turn it on and I would move an axis, you know, like move them towards 0, like 0 on X would be moving it this way towards the home. And if it goes the opposite way, then you know your wires are flipped around on the plug. You can either fix it in firmware or you can just flip the wires around. And then the same thing with the Y. When you bring it towards 0, it'll head towards the end stop, and when you go bigger numbers, it'll go away from the end stop. And I would just check, make sure it's running the right way, because if it's not, when you go to home, it'll go the wrong way and you'll get some thumping noises. And then if you just get outright jumping of the motor, usually it's nothing wrong with the motor. Like, it'll just mean you have 4 wires. Where's the stepper motor here? So it's actually got 1, 2, 3, 4. This one has a bunch of pins, but the 2 outer ones are used and the 2 middle ones are used. And if it's jumping, what I usually do is I'll either flip the outers or I'll flip the middles, and then it'll stop jumping and it'll move. But if it moves the wrong direction when you do that, then you got to flip the whole plug. So, but at least you know you'll have your pairs right before you flip your plug if it's going the wrong way. And I'll actually make a video on that too, and I'll intentionally do the polarity wrong so you can see what happens and then how to correct it. It's a real simple process, but it can be a real pain in the butt because not all steppers are wired the same way, and even creality ones, different vintages, they're gonna possibly be wired a little different, and that's something to keep in mind. But so once I neaten up everything and I hook up my reverse Bowden and that little bracket, again, we have M5 by, I think I used 8s on these, and they're just gonna, it'll mount right above that, and and basically it'll be plugged into EXP3. And I'm going to pause the video, neaten up some of this, because you don't need to like watch me stick a bunch of zip ties on, because I'm sure you guys can figure out how to neaten yours up with the particular wiring situation you have. So we'll be right back in a minute. Okay, and we're back. I seem to accumulate messes when I do this kind of stuff. But so anyways, we're going to power it on. And I'm going to show you a few things to look for. Okay. So my thermistors are okay, because we have actual degree settings. If you had one wire that wasn't connected good or short, you'd have, it would say ERR instead of like 19 and 18. And so I guess the first things I usually do is I like to go into temperature, and I don't do the preheat, but let me see. I guess let's go to nozzle. And you don't got to crank it way up, but we want to crank it above what it says. We just want to make sure it's heating. I'm just going to go to like 80 something. And then we're going to go to the main screen. And we're going to watch it just to make sure it's heating up. And it is. So I have a really high wattage. I'll have to do a PID tune because I've had this all apart. So mine will jump way up until I relearn the PID, and it'll drop back down. And it'll eventually level off, but there's like I think it's a 40 watt heater in the hot end from the factory. And I got like a 75, but I have a 500 Celsius hot end. So and the other thing you want to do, you'll have a different always on fan, but mine's spinning, which is that white and blue, the blue and yellow wire, so I got that right. Starting to level off now. And then I like to also make sure my bed is gonna heat. So we'll bring that up above. I guess we'll just go to like 54. Let's get back into the main screen. That'll heat a little slower because I just got a stock heater. Some of my printers, I have some pretty radical heaters on. And we're just making sure it's going to heat up. I'm pretty sure it's good at this point, because it is heating up. And I'm not going to home anything, but I'm going to go into motion, move axis. We're going to move X first. I'm just going to go a few millimeters at first. I got this about centered so it can, I guess that's centered. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the 1 millimeter, and we're going to go on the plus. And so when we add, it should start moving to the right. And if it's moving to the left when you go positive figures, if it's moving to the left towards the end stop, then you know this motor here is running backwards. And then you would either have to reverse all the wires in this plug, like totally flipped, or you can do it in firmware. And then, so we know that's right now because my axis was moving the right way. So we're going to do the same thing for the other ones. And so I'm going to move it towards the end stop by making the numbers smaller, and it's headed that way. I haven't homed it, so it said it was max, but so I don't think you can see both at the same time. You won't be able to see the numbers good. But so, well, anyways, I'm moving the right way on that one, so that's good. These are just safety checks so that you don't have a bunch of like thumping motors or Z going the wrong way. So we're going to move Z, and we're going to do it 1 millimeter. So when we add, it's supposed to go down. So I'm adding. You can see it's going down. If it was going the wrong way, you would have to flip the plug down there to get it to go the right way, or do it in firmware. But if you use the firmware from the group and it's running the wrong way, if it was me, I would just flip the plug, because I made sure that I had all that set the way it would normally be, like on a creality Ender 3. Well, technically the Z has to run the way an Ender 5 is, and I switched that in the firmware so that as long as you got stock motors and stock wiring, it should run the right way. And then the next thing you want to do, let me see, I don't remember if I set up this particular firmware to do it this way, but under homing, I like to home just one axis, and then I like to, right after I home it, let it start to move towards the Z, and I'll have one finger down by the power switch and one finger up here, and I'll just kind of test trigger it. And the reason why I do that is I want to make sure the end stop's going to stop the thing. And if it doesn't, then I just hit the power, because I'd rather power it off than have it go all the way to the end and just start going da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I do the same thing with Y. And then when I do Z, what I do is I like to move the bed down like, I don't know, 50, 60 millimeters anyway. And then I'll home Z, and right after it starts moving, I'll go up like this and I'll trigger it. It's gonna, if it works, it's gonna stop the bed, and then it's gonna go back down, and it's gonna try to come back up. And at that point, you know it's good. And if it doesn't stop when you hand trigger it, hit that switch and find out why. Because you don't want to smash a glass bed or burn a hole in, like, you know, the stock bed, or really abuse any bed for that matter. And then the other thing I also like to check, just so I know everything's working, I believe it's in temperature. We want to check the fan. So I just crank it up. Stock fans don't like to run below 20 or 25. I mean, they'll kind of, but they jump a little bit. I got a 50-15, and mine took off just fine, so I'm good there too. So basically, I haven't tested my Z mount, my end stops yet, but I guess we'll do one so that, and you don't have to do it through homing. You could move the axis to 0, and then, but I'm gonna home X, and I triggered it and it stopped, so we're good. Normally I have the hand that I got my camera ready, so that one's good. So I'm gonna click home Y, Oh, why am I going the wrong way? Yeah. Oh, I know. Okay, so the SD card that I had in there had the wrong firmware on it, Ender 3 firmware. So I have to give a reflash. The directions are going right, but the difference between Ender 3 and Ender 5 firmware is the homing direction. So I gotta flash that real quick, and then that problem will be fixed. But I don't know. But the end stop works anyway. I'm actually gonna double check just to make sure that that's what it is, because let me see my motion here. That was Y. So I'm gonna click. Let's go towards home. Yeah, it's going the right way. So it's that. I gotta reflash the firmware because I think I must have had the card in it when I powered. Oh, when I powered up, and so it actually thinks it's got set up like an Ender 3. But I'll fix that real quick. And then, but basically that's the assembly, once I flash my firmware. And if you have stock Ender 3 firmware, you'll have that same problem that I just had here. In fact, I know why now. I actually used the different board than what I used the first time I assembled. They're both the same board, but that one was flashed directly for an Ender 3 and didn't have the home tweaks. So that just kind of shows you what happens. The directions will still go right on the motors when you test, but when you home, if you got Ender 3 firmware, it'll go the wrong way. And it's literally just one little change from plus to minus or minus to plus on the home direction there, like either a -1 or 1. And Y's got to be changed on that, and I think Z and X doesn't have to be changed, because not only did we flip this, but we also moved the end stop to the opposite side too, so that doesn't have to be changed in the Ender 3 firmware because it's where it originally was. And it's kind of deceiving because technically this is where that end stop was on the Ender 3 also, but in the middle on that bar. But the bed moves back and forth on an Ender 3, so when the access was to, like, my steppers are locked, but if it was coming forward, technically your bed would be going backwards to come forward, and where your bed is stationary on this Ender 5, it's actually doing the opposite, even though it kind of doesn't look like it. And that's why those home directions are different. And another thing I discovered putting this together is to do that 400 millimeter height extension from 350 to 400. You don't have to get the longer lead screws. I thought you did, because these are, I want to say they're like 380 or something like that. But one of these is a stock. I used Ender 5 ones, but Ender 3 ones, I compared one and it was the same length as this one. And I stuck it in there, and when it's all the way home, you won't have a lot of threads sticking out, but you'll have a few, and that's really all that matters. So you can actually, as long as you use these short bearings as opposed to what is stock, like, the reason why they use these long ones is because stock and Ender 5 Pro only has the 2 back ones and no front ones. So it needs this extra bearing surface to kind of help with the front drooping. And like this particular design, I guess you could probably build it the same way and have this, cut off and not have this dual Z. But if you do that, you'll have to use these long ones. And then also, there's still a chance of droop. And on Thingiverse and probably 3D printables and a few other places, people have made prints that go underneath. And of course, these being longer, they go around them and they come out. And I believe, if I remember right, the bed bolts go right through them, and they're just kind of like a support that kind of helps with droop. Does not work as good as this setup here with the dual belted Z, but it is cheaper to do. And if you get your support really good, then it probably won't affect performance, because I've seen plenty of Ender 5 set up that way. And I left my bed heaters going, but I did that on purpose because even though it's not cranked up real high, I figured I'd give it like a minute or a few minutes just to kind of make sure she weren't going to do the thermal runaway. And but yeah, so that's basically the Ender Thrive 235. The 410 are all the sizes. Pretty much build exactly the same way. If you do the 410, I kind of highly recommend this dual Z belted setup. Or like you could do dual motorized Z, but that can go out of sync. And this way, belted, like, if you were to power down and, turn your lead screws a little bit to move it, both are going to go at the same time at the same rate. So it's not going to mess with your leveling, whereas if this was dual motorized Z and I just did that, the rear one would stay where it is. It might move a little tiny bit if you move this one a lot, but it's going to bind. It's going to be a little bit hard on the equipment, and then you're going to have to re-level. And the big tall one over here with the mess around it, that's how I got that one set up, and I kind of regret it. So I'm actually going to put this assembly on it. I'm going to flash firmware. I'll do a firmware video too. Not tonight because it's probably 11 o'clock at night. But I'll do a firmware video on, from using Marlin 2.1.2.2, I think is the newest one. And we're going to start with the default Ender 3 Pro profile, or we could do the Ender 5 one, it doesn't matter. And I'll just kind of show you the changes and how to compile it anyway. And that'll be that. And so until next time, and I hope everybody enjoyed the video. Sorry some of these are so long.